Every Family Guy fan loves a good Brian and Stewie adventure. The pair of best frenemies have traveled across the world, the multiverse, and most notably, time itself. So let's take a look at all the best time travel hijinks Family Guy's best pair has gone through over the series.
Wait! Hold it! Stop! Wait! No! Hold it! Stop!
I don't know what I'm doing here, I'm just looking for the can.
By season 7, we had already seen Brian and Stewie perfect their adventure episodes. What started with the instant classic Road to Rhode Island evolved into the continuing road trip format they followed up with others like Road to Europe and Road to Rupert. These episodes feature some of the best moments in the entire series with classic song and dance numbers, memorable action hijinks, and of course, plenty of Brian and Stewie banter. So when season 7 decided to add to the Road 2 format, the bar was set pretty high. In the episode Road to Germany, Mort accidentally stumbles into Stewie's time machine and transports himself back to 1930s Poland at the beginning of World War II. Stewie and Bryan quickly travel back to save him from the invading German soldiers, but Stewie's return pad fails, stranding them in the past. After a chase scene parodying Back to the Future, the trio find themselves in England with none other than the foul-mouthed Winston Churchill himself.
Yeah, well, you're a
Wickedly funny!
Somehow Darkest Hour missed that particular Churchill moment in the biopic. Once Stewie figures out that the return pad needs uranium, they make their way to a secret German testing site where they finally figure out how to return to the future. Once there, Stewie immediately obliterates past Mort so that present Mort will never learn about the time machine. It seems they would have saved a lot of time and effort if he had just done that the second they found him in the past, but hey, look, I'm not the evil baby genius. The pilot of Family Guy looks different by today's standards. Looking back on it today, it looks like one of those low-quality Adult Swim cartoons that get canceled after like one season, because, let's face it, not everyone can be Rick and Morty. Seems that one of the writers caught the pilot on cable one night and agreed that it's super weird compared to today's Family Guy. So the show decided to poke fun at its rougher early days by having Stewie and Bryan revisit the pilot. Bryan tells Stewie that he forgot where he buried a tennis ball years earlier. The pair then travel back to 1999 where they make fun of how weird everyone looks in the past, including the moment where Peter's eye drifts over his face due to bad animation.
Ew, I remember this. Peter's eye did that weird creepy thing where it went over his nose.
They jump around the pilot episode, interfering with Peter's blimp, the bachelor party, and the Kool-Aid Man's entrance. Once they get the batteries they need for the return pad, they jump into the future to find that everything's gone wrong. Present Bryan apparently told past Bryan secrets from the future to avert a national disaster, messing up the future. After seeing how screwed up the world has become, they jump back again, but this time Bryan tells his past self to take credit for the Harry Potter books. I mean, who can blame him for that one? This goes on and on until dozens of Bryans and Stewies arrive at the same moment in the past trying to fix the timeline from another screw-up the pair caused. The whole group works everything out, and our Bryan and Stewie travel to just before they arrived in the past and threaten themselves at gunpoint to stay away or else. I'm pretty sure that Christopher Nolan is a huge Family Guy fan because he totally ripped off the idea for Tenet from the season 11 episode Yug Ylimaf, or Family Guy spelled backwards. This episode begins with Bryan on a date. He tries to impress her by showing off his time machine. Really, Bryan? That's your best move? Anyway, Bryan continues to do this until he notices that there's a sort of time travel mileage gauge that's been recording all of his trips. Clearly inspired by Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Bryan tries to reverse the gauge, but all this does is end up breaking the machine and time itself. Bryan and Stewie discover the next morning that all of time has started moving in reverse. They show off several of Family Guy's greatest moments, like one of Peter's legendary chicken fights and the infamous Ipecac scene in reverse. Though I don't think Stewie and Bryan were quite as happy to see that second one coming around again. When Stewie sees that Bonnie is still pregnant with Susie, he realizes that time's reversal will eventually cause him to be unborn. As Stewie is rushed backwards into the hospital to undo his own birth, it falls to Bryan to figure out how to fix the time machine. Bryan simply turns the gauge forward and everything goes back to normal. He probably should have tried that before he saw the Ipecac scene coming. Still don't believe me about Christopher Nolan? Well, you just wait until his next film features a 15-minute long chicken fight and we'll see if you believe me then. If you ask most Family Guy fans what the absolute low point in the series was, they'll probably say the episode where Bryan gets hit by a car. This bold move for the show was an attempt to add some drama into a show that really didn't need any. If that wasn't insult enough, the show even introduced a new dog in the form of Vinny. This whole thing was so universally reviled that fans even started a petition to have the show canceled. Luckily, Christmas Guy was the episode that made all our dreams come true by bringing Bryan back to the land of the living. In the episode, Stewie is having trouble getting into the Christmas spirit. Vinny does his best to lift the little guy out of his bad mood, even posing as Bryan for a second, but nothing would quite do it. Stewie ends up realizing that what he really misses is Bryan. He discovers his past self time-traveling to the future before Stewie destroyed his time machine. Present Stewie uses past Stewie's return pad to jump back and push Bryan away from that speeding car. He then explains to Bryan exactly what would have happened to him if he hadn't come back to save him. Present Stewie then fades away, leaving only past Stewie to enter the scene completely unaware of probably the most heroic thing he'd ever done. We then catch up with the present, where Bryan is back with the whole family. It turns out to be one of Family Guy's better Christmas episodes. Just not for Vinny.
You're alive, my friend!
What? Of course I'm alive. What the hell's going on here?
Look, homework is hard for everyone. It's especially hard when you're someone like Chris, who is, academically challenged, to say the least. Stewie and Bryan decide that the only way to save Chris from failing the 9th grade is to actually take him into the past so that he can learn from the experience. The trio jump through several moments in history. They see famous figures from American history like Thomas Jefferson and George Washington. Then they ruin Ernest Hemingway's life and inspire Jane Austen to write Pride and Prejudice, in a way that I don't remember hearing about in English class.
Give me some of that. The insides of men. This is what fuels me.
After Bryan gets revenge on Ivan Pavlov for all those dog experiments, Chris reveals that he still hasn't learned anything. Stewie calls him an idiot, which upsets him to the point that he ends up on the single most infamous ship in all of history. The three find themselves on board the one and only Titanic, where the return pad gets damaged again. Why doesn't Stewie just make like several of them? Anyway, once the ship starts to sink, it looks like all of them are about to be Leonardo DiCaprio'd in the icy cold water. Luckily, Chris thinks on his feet and proves his street smarts by throwing someone overboard so that there will be room on the last lifeboat. In the end, Chris wakes up perfectly safe but still doesn't know any history. Luckily for him, the guy Chris threw overboard was the ancestor of his history teacher. His new history teacher is a lot more laid back, saving him from failing. The moral of the story is, if you want to get out of an exam, just alter the entire time-space continuum so that you don't have to take it. Huh.
If I'm such a moron, then how did I get on a fancy boat?
As great as all this time travel is, we think the Brian and Stewie episode that topped them all was the multiverse one. I mean, they made fun of Seth Green's robot chicken using Seth Green. That's like a whole other level of burn. Anyway, have a good one and try not to alter the time-space continuum, y'all.